There's a strange question that more people are starting to ask. Not out loud. Usually late at night. After work. After paying bills. After checking a bank account that somehow looks smaller than expected. Again. The question sounds simple. But it carries an uncomfortable weight. If I'm doing everything right, why does this still feel pointless? Not impossible. Not catastrophic. Just pointless. You work. You earn. You spend. You save a little. You repeat. Years pass. Promotions arrive. Technology improves. The economy grows. And yet something feels strangely disconnected. As if modern life became a game where everyone is moving but nobody is quite sure where they're going. Because for millions of people, that's exactly what happened. And the reason may have less to do with personal failure than most people think. In fact, the feeling itself might be a clue. A clue that something fundamental changed in the relationship between money, work, and meaning. The strange part is that modern life should feel amazing. At least on paper. The average person today has access to tools that would have looked like science fiction a generation ago. Instant communication. Unlimited information. Food delivered to the front door. Global entertainment available 24 hours a day. Entire businesses can be started from a laptop. Investments can be purchased in seconds. Banking happens from a pocket. Historically speaking, this level of convenience is absurd. Yet surveys across many developed countries keep revealing the same pattern. People report higher levels of stress. Higher levels of financial anxiety. Higher levels of burnout. Even among individuals who aren't technically poor. And that's where things get interesting. Because financial struggle isn't always about survival anymore. Increasingly, it's about progress. Or more specifically, the lack of progress. For most of modern history, there was a relatively simple deal. Work hard. Earn more over time. Build a better life than the previous generation. That expectation became deeply embedded into society. Parents believed it. Governments promoted it. Businesses relied on it. Schools prepared people for it. And for a while, it seemed to work. A factory worker in the 1950s could often support a family on a single income. A modest house felt achievable. Basic financial milestones appeared reachable. Not easy, but reachable. Today, many young adults look at those same milestones and feel like they're staring at another planet. The numbers tell part of the story. Housing prices climbed. Education costs exploded. Healthcare expenses increased. Childcare became more expensive. Meanwhile, wages often struggled to keep pace. Not everywhere. Not equally. But enough to create a growing sense of frustration. And frustration changes how people experience money. Because money is rarely just money. Money is time. Freedom. Security. Possibility. When people feel financially stuck, they're often reacting to something deeper than a number inside a bank account. They're reacting to a shrinking sense of control. Imagine running on a treadmill. At first, the speed feels manageable. Then it gradually increases. You start running harder. You're sweating more. Using more effort. Burning more energy. But when you look down, you're still in the same place. That feeling describes modern financial life for many people. Productivity rises. Hours increase. Side hustles appear. Gig work expands. Yet the finish line seems strangely stationary. And that creates a psychological problem. Because humans can tolerate difficulty surprisingly well. What humans struggle with is effort that feels disconnected from progress. There's a reason video games constantly provide indicators of advancement. Levels. Points. Achievements. Rewards. The human brain likes movement. It likes evidence that effort matters. Modern financial systems sometimes create the opposite experience. People work harder than ever while feeling less certain about the future. And uncertainty has consequences. When people feel uncertain, they delay decisions. They postpone having children. Delay buying homes. Delay career changes. Delay taking risks. Life slowly becomes a waiting room. Waiting for better conditions. Waiting for more money. Waiting for stability. Waiting for permission to start living. Sometimes that waiting lasts years. And during those years, something subtle happens. People stop asking whether they're building a life. They start asking whether they're maintaining one. That distinction matters. Because maintenance feels very different from growth. Maintenance keeps the lights on. Growth creates hope. Modern economies became extremely efficient at encouraging maintenance. Monthly subscriptions. Monthly payments. Monthly bills. Monthly obligations. Every month arrives carrying financial commitments from decisions made months or years earlier. A streaming service here. A phone payment there. A car payment. Insurance. Rent. Utilities. Software. Memberships. None of them seem dramatic individually. Together, they create something powerful. A permanent claim on future income. Before a paycheck even arrives, much of it already has a destination. And that changes the emotional experience of earning money. Work begins feeling less like creating possibilities and more like servicing obligations. The irony is almost funny. Technology promised liberation. Automation promised efficiency. Productivity tools promised more free time. Yet many people feel busier than ever. Partly because every efficiency gain creates new expectations. Email made communication faster. Now everyone expects immediate responses. Remote work removed commuting. Now many people remain connected around the clock. Smartphones created flexibility. They also eliminated boundaries. The result is a strange paradox. Life became easier. But it rarely feels easier. The system solved many old problems while quietly introducing new ones. And perhaps nowhere is this more visible than in consumer culture. Modern economies depend heavily on consumption. That isn't controversial. People buying things keeps businesses alive. Businesses create jobs. Jobs generate income. Income supports spending. The cycle continues. But there is a hidden challenge. Once basic needs are satisfied, how do you keep consumption growing? The answer turned out to be surprisingly simple. You stop selling products. You start selling identities. A watch becomes status. A car becomes success. A house becomes validation. A vacation becomes proof that life is going well. Marketing evolved from solving practical problems to solving emotional ones. Or at least appearing to. This works because human desires have no obvious endpoint. There is always a bigger goal. A nicer neighborhood. A better lifestyle. A higher income. A more impressive version of success. And because the target keeps moving, satisfaction often remains temporary. People achieve goals that once seemed life-changing. Then adapt. The new normal arrives. The excitement fades. The chase resumes. Economists call part of this process hedonic adaptation. Most people simply call it life. You finally get the raise. A few months later, it feels ordinary. You buy the car. Soon it becomes transportation. You move into the apartment. Then it becomes background scenery. The human brain is remarkably efficient at normalizing improvement, which creates an uncomfortable reality. Financial success doesn't always feel as successful as expected. And when expectations exceed emotional reality, disappointment appears. Not because life became worse. Because anticipation was larger than the experience itself. Social media amplifies this effect dramatically. For most of history, people compared themselves to neighbors. Now they compare themselves to the entire world. Every day. Every hour. Sometimes every minute. Someone richer is always visible. Someone more successful. Someone younger. Smarter. More attractive. More productive. The comparison never ends because the supply never ends. And comparison has economic consequences. People begin spending based on perception rather than need. Luxury industries understand this extremely well. Status sells. Always has. Probably always will. Because status isn't really about objects. It's about emotion. Recognition. Belonging. Importance. People often buy symbols while believing they're buying products. That distinction matters. Because symbols are expensive. Especially when financed through debt. Credit made this easier. Historically, consumption required savings. Today, consumption often requires approval. Buy now. Pay later. Upgrade today. Future income will handle the details. Most of the time, this feels harmless. Until enough future income becomes permanently committed. Then financial flexibility begins disappearing. Slowly. Quietly. Almost invisibly. Which brings us back to that strange feeling. The feeling that something about modern financial life seems off. Because many people aren't merely working for money anymore. They're working to sustain systems that require continuous participation. The bills continue. The subscriptions continue. The expectations continue. The comparisons continue. The treadmill keeps moving. And eventually a difficult question appears. How much of modern financial life is actually about creating value? And how much is about maintaining momentum? Those aren't the same thing. One creates progress. The other creates activity. Modern society often rewards activity so effectively that people mistake it for progress. Being busy feels productive. Spending feels successful. Optimization feels meaningful. Until one day someone stops and asks a dangerous question. Dangerous because it changes everything. What am I actually trying to achieve? Not next month. Not next year. Eventually. Because many financial goals exist without clear endings. People want more income. Then more income. Then even more income. without ever defining enough. And without a definition of enough, every victory becomes temporary. Every achievement becomes another starting line. The finish line keeps moving. The race never officially ends. That might explain why some of the wealthiest societies in history still struggle with widespread dissatisfaction. The issue isn't always scarcity. Sometimes it's direction. People know how to earn. They know how to consume. They know how to optimize. But they aren't always sure what the optimization is for. And that uncertainty creates a vacuum. A vacuum filled by advertising, influencers, algorithms, corporate incentives, cultural expectations. Everyone offers answers. Usually answers that involve buying something. But perhaps the deeper problem isn't financial at all. Perhaps it's philosophical. Modern economies became extraordinarily effective at helping people pursue goals, yet remarkably ineffective at helping people choose them. Those are very different challenges. One concerns efficiency. The other concerns meaning. And meaning is much harder to automate. Which leaves us with an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe modern life feels financially pointless because financial success was never supposed to provide purpose by itself. Maybe money works best as a tool, but many people were taught to treat it as a destination. A destination it can never fully become. Because every tool eventually raises the same question. What are you using it for? And perhaps that's the question hiding underneath so much modern financial anxiety. Not whether people have enough. Not whether they're working hard enough. Not whether they're optimizing correctly. But whether the system became so focused on helping people move faster that nobody stopped to ask where they were trying to go. And if millions of people eventually realize they've been running without a destination, what happens next?